Thank you for joining us and welcome to another edition of Answers Network. I'm your host, Alan Cardoza, and each week this show will address many ways of creating greater health, joy, and love for you and those you care about. And we're going to introduce you to top professionals and talented authors who are working to make this world a better place for all of us. Now, I'd really appreciate it if you could all do me a big favor. Please forward one of our shows, or many of them if you'd like, to your social media group and to someone you know who can benefit from a particular subject. This is one powerful way that we can make a positive difference together. Now, I want you all to know that I'm truly grateful that you take your time to listen to, or in some cases, watch this show, and especially those that are sending in questions, comments, reviews, and suggestions. Please remember, this show exists for you. Now, I was told that I haven't mentioned this in a while, so here goes. If you haven't gotten your free copy of the Attitude of Gratitude Journal yet, please go to our website at answers.network and download a copy. Give it 21 days and comment on whatever platform you listen to us on. Comment as to what focusing on gratitude has meant for you and your loved ones. And if you'd like us to post it, send it to us and we'll post it on our website or talk about it on the air. Just let us know. Now, today is going to be a very interesting day because our guest moved to the former mining frontier town of Gallup, New Mexico in 1979 after finishing his education at the University of New Mexico. Now, as an outsider who became an insider, Bob Rosebrough shares his historic realities of this unique town and gives readers a rare and true insight into Gallup's iconic stories and long hidden secrets. Bob is a lawyer, an outdoorsman, an author or co-author of 4 previous books, and has appeared as a character in a Tony Hillerman novel. His latest book, A Place of Thin Veil, Life and Death in Gallup, New Mexico, is a memoir about regular people going up against Goliath issues. And it's for anyone interested in spiritual conflict, Navajo people, history and culture, political maneuvering, true crime, alcohol abuse awareness, taking on City Hall or working with City Hall, and rooting for the underdog. I found it to be indicative of many of the issues we are dealing with around the world today. Bob, welcome to Answers Network.
Glad to be here, Alan.
So it's a very interesting book. It's a very interesting way to look at things. And as I said, I felt like it was sort of a microcosm of many of the things that we're dealing with today. But the one thing that struck me was, after finishing law school, you chose to move to Gallup, New Mexico, rather than either remain in Albuquerque where you were at school or move to one of the major metropolitan areas that seemed to provide a lot of work for attorneys. Now, given that Gallup had a reputation of high alcoholism and many other problems, why did you choose that?
Simply put, I think something inside me was looking for adventure. And Gallup is, I think, as you say, is one of the most notorious border towns to the Navajo Reservation. We're about 24 miles from Window Rock. And Gallup has a very conflict-filled and at times difficult and even almost torturous history. And that a lot of our history brings into play our current conflicts. We haven't gotten over a lot of it.
Now, I mentioned in the very beginning that you appeared as a character in a Tony Hillerman novel. It's interesting because that was one of the things that drew me when my producer and I were going over the different guests that we'd like to have on, because I went through a period of time to where I read just nearly everything that Tony Hillerman wrote. And I felt like I really was being invited into, the Navajo culture. So how did this work out that you appeared as a character in one of his books, and tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
A few years after I moved to Gallup, 3 or 4 years, I also started reading Tony Hillerman novels, and as many other people, I enjoyed them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they do provide some really good insights into Navajo culture. But at the time, I was also very active as a rock climber and mountaineer, and it came to my mind that rock climbing on shiprock, which is one of the major volcanic peaks or plugs out on the Navajo reservation, is barred and is prohibited by the Navajo Nation. You're not permitted to do that, to climb on that sacred site. And it just occurred to me that that had the makings of something for a Tony Hillerman plot. Perhaps some climbers trying to solve a mystery, through climbing shiprock and finding a corpse or bones up high on the mountain. So Tony was interested from the very outset, but he also let me know. He says, "Well, I'm pretty well filled up on plot ideas for a few years," and it was then probably 7 or 8 years later, just out of the blue, that I got a call from him and wanting to incorporate that into a plot, and then I worked with him. And it was obviously it was a great life experience to work on a plot with Tony Hillerman.
Oh, absolutely. And so who was your character?
My character is Tony put me in the novel by my given name. My character is called Bob Rosebrough, and I'm a Gallup lawyer who's a friend of Joe Leaphorn, the Navajo detective. And Joe Leaphorn suggests that I go up on a helicopter with him, and I climb down a ladder onto the summit of shiprock to open up and retrieve a climbing register that provides some details that help solve the mystery. So, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds great. And was this was before you became mayor?
Yes, that was well before I became mayor, probably about 10 years before I became mayor. I became was mayor of Gallup from 2003 to 2008, or excuse me, 2007, 4-year term.
In your book, you talk about that, I guess the mayor race, and it was pretty intense. Describe that election and your concerns for yourself and your family.
Well, the race in the campaign, the way I would say it is just about everything that could go well did go well. The campaign itself was not the difficult phase of my experiences in politics. Those came about 6 months into the 4-year term when I had. But the campaign itself, we had a field of 6 candidates. I was the only person who was a candidate who wasn't born and raised in Gallup. Boy, I really put my heart into it. And I worked hard, had a lot of friends, and my friends worked hard as well. And it was a sizable, you could characterize it as a landslide, but in other ways it wasn't. But I gathered more votes than the other 5 candidates combined, but I only received about 51% of the votes. So in some ways it was, but what I would say, Alan, is that I purposely avoided trying to take on Gallup's problems with alcohol for about 6 months. And I wanted to build some momentum in the community, get some projects done, help get the town cleaned up, do some physical things in terms of physical appearances of the town before starting some alcohol initiatives. And I did that in 6 months into my term, where I advocated filing some nuisance suits against some of the bars which in statistical information indicated were over-serving to their patrons, that they were continuing to serve alcohol to people after they had reached the point of intoxication. And that's a controversial thing to do in Gallup. And so at that point, it was on. And so for the next 3.5 years, there was never a dull moment. And it was, as I say about Gallup, I characterize Gallup as being truly wonderful and terrible at the same time.
At the same time, I know.
Yeah, and that was my truly my experience as mayor as well.
Well, let's back up a little bit to your motivation. I think right now I hear from a lot of people, and I'm somebody who was asked many years ago in '95 and in '99, to run for office, and it chose not to. I was raising small children at that time, and it wasn't. I didn't think it was the best move for me. But I hear from so many people that sound defeated in the sense that they're talking about all the things that are going wrong right now in our society, but yet they feel helpless that one person can't make a difference. So what was your motivation, in the sense that, because again, a lot of people would look at that situation and go, I don't know what I can do, but you decided, I'm going to run for mayor and I'm going to do it. So let's talk about that motivation.
Well, I was real motivated. In part, I was motivated by frustration, and my primary frustration at the time was not the alcohol problems that we have in Gallup, which are very, very frustrating. But we have a remarkable landscape in Gallup. We live out. Our town is just in the American West, and the beauty of our landscape, the red rocks, Pyramid Rock, Church Rock, the high desert in and near Gallup is just a beautiful but relatively harsh place, and it's a great place for outdoor recreation. And me and a bunch of friends, a bunch of people in Gallup were just actively in a volunteer capacity trying to bring awareness to the fact that our opportunities for mountain biking, hiking, and just getting outdoors and getting exercise and getting healthy and attracting professionals to the community was a worthy cause. And frankly, we were getting stonewalled. We were not making progress, from the powers that be in political office. And so that's what motivated me to run for mayor, was to try to get somebody in City Hall who would look on those kind of outdoor initiatives favorably.
Yeah, and what it sounds like is that someone who maybe wasn't funded by the many bars in town,
right,
and was more interested in kind of building something that's a little more family friendly.
Yeah, family friendly and health oriented.
And health oriented, absolutely. Now, when we're talking about family friendly, let's talk about raising a family, because that was apparently, obviously, another decision that you had to make. What were your concerns about raising children in that area?
It's again, it's wonderful and it's terrible. There's good experiences and some very difficult experiences. The good experiences, and one that I think my children really cherish is Gallup is a very diverse, multicultural area, in every sense. It epitomizes the tricultural heritage of New Mexico, Spanish, and Native American and Europeans. The Europeans are just amazingly diverse, and we also have a lot of Muslim people in Gallup, and Asians, a lot of Asian people in Gallup. It's a remarkably racially and culturally diverse community. So that's that's a good place for kids to grow up, or good feature to grow up in them.
And that makes perfect sense. And one of the things that I've talked about in my own life is I had a tendency to spin a lot of pie plates, and that's dating myself in the sense of the variety shows where the guy would run from one end of the stage to the other, and he'd spin a pie plate and spin a pie plate and spin a pie plate, and he'd get down. By the time he gets to about the 10th one, that first one's starting to wobble a little bit. And I looked at my life and I said, okay, I think I'm spinning too many pie plates. So while mayor, how are you balancing a law firm, your family, and whatever conflict or issues that come with being the mayor of a small town?
Yeah, Alan, I had a bunch of plates up in the air as well during that period. There was absolutely never a dull moment, continuously, every single day for a 4-year period. And I characterize it, it was absolutely the best of times, and it was absolutely the worst of times. And I'm very, very glad I did it, and I'm very glad it's over.
Again, it was something that I was asked to do. I chose not to. But so how old were your kids at this time, and what kind of conversations did you have with them to kind of help everything, to help you as a family get through that? And again, a 4-year period for kids can seem like a lifetime.
Yeah, it was. It was a lifetime, and there were some difficult moments, and some controversial periods and moments, and to just be bluntly honest, at times I was concerned for their safety, things reached at a point kind of a fevered pitch in terms of the controversy, where some of the liquor licensees really felt threatened, and they felt their livelihood was threatened. I think that was just very misperceived, but we obviously had different views of it. It was hard, and at times there were times when I needed law enforcement protection and surveillance of my home for a limited period of time. Well,
I think those licensees should actually have felt very grateful, because if they were here in California, as an investigator, anytime there was an investigation where there was alcohol involved in any sort of accident, one of the first things that the attorney would say is, find out where the alcohol came from so we can go after the deep pocket.
Right. Right.
So, that would certainly change that. And was that one of the areas, one of the things that did that type of law change anything?
In New Mexico, we do have dram shop litigation, and it's a significant deterrent for liquor licensees to, it's a huge legal incentive for them to not overserve their patrons.
Yeah,
and it has made a difference. And I think the civil liability, which you're referring to in what we would call a dram shop action, is something that is very good public policy, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. Now, you mentioned as mayor, one of the things you wanted to do was to increase the natural play, to take advantage of the beauty that you have, to set up things that are more family friendly and and health related. How successful were you in doing that, and did that then also help both your personal life, as a man, but also as a parent?
Yeah, it did. It's we were hugely successful in getting some outdoor recreational venues. 15 miles east, kind of southeast of Gallup, we have the Zuni Mountains. We now have a set of single track mountain bike trails and hiking trails, roughly 50 miles in, with more mileage on its way for as much as 80 miles. And it's fantastic. It's mountain biking and hiking among ponderosa pines up in the Zuni Mountains. Closer to town, out east of town at Red Rock State Park, we have a couple of it's an amazing venue. The Red Rocks east of Gallup that are highlighted by Pyramid Peak and also Church Rock. They're I tell you, I can't get enough of that place. I just anytime I have an opportunity, that's one of the first places I head, just to go out and get some relief from stress from the office and just hike some of the trails out there and going up to some of the high points.
Do some of these trails, or like the Red Rock area, does it have like energy vortexes and things? And I'm somebody who has been to Sedona and to Bryce Canyon and areas like that. And I know that there's an energy that is so beneficial. Is there a similar energy that you can describe that they have there as well?
Well, as you were talking, I got goosebumps. If that gives you an idea, it is, and we're close to Sedona as well, and I've hiked a lot and mountain biked a lot in Sedona. And it's the Red Rocks east of Gallup are truly a special place, and it's when you go there, it's just a place that it draws you back time and time again. And when you're there, you feel balanced and you feel like you're truly in a special place. And I don't pretend to be an expert on the concept of vortexes, but I tell you, just the feeling I get in my chest when I'm there tells me it's a place I want to be.
Well, and I'm the same way. Again, I don't profess to have any special knowledge or anything else, but in the same sense, when something feels good, I don't have to have a particular explanation or some scientific reason for it. But I agree. You just want to go back. And is there a best time? Is there a best season? I mean, I'm kind of visualizing that, once you've got all this started, I would seem like the town would actually benefit greatly, because you're getting more tourists in, which means more tourist money. You probably, I don't know if they got more, hotels or something like that set up to be able to house the tourists. How has it grown, and where do you see it going in the future?
Well, I think there's a lot of advantages to it, and I start off by, in part, it's something that helps us attract professionals that we need to town. It helps us attract teachers. It helps us attract doctors, nurses, who really value that in a community, that resource in a community. I'm biased, I got into it just for the health aspect of our community, and just the opportunity to get the kids out and let them explore the outdoors as well.
We have a question that has come in that touches right on this topic that we're talking about right now. And again, I want to thank those that take the time to do this. either sending them in ahead of time or going ahead and instant messaging them whenever you see fit. This one reads, I am looking to move out of California as the cost of living has gotten so high that it is impossible to make ends meet with just one job. I work in the healthcare industry and my husband works in construction. Is there an abundance of employment opportunities? This is from Meredith in Los Angeles, California.
Absolutely. We need medical professionals here, and there is ongoing active construction. People who people in the construction industry do well in Gallup, and encourage you to consider taking a look at us.
All right. Okay, we are speaking with Bob Rosebrough, and his latest book is A Place of Thin Veil, Life and Death in Gallup, New Mexico. When we come back, Bob, tell us a little bit more just about the book and sort of the stories that you have weaved together. But for everybody, stay with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to Answers Network.
Thanks.
Founded over 30 years ago to meet the needs of families in crisis, West Shield has continually focused on resolving issues that negatively impact families and businesses. Our signature therapeutic transportation service helps to ensure that adolescents in crisis are safely transported to specialized schools, programs, and treatment centers with unsurpassed experience and success. We are supported by our full-service licensed investigation agency that has legally, professionally, and compassionately located hundreds of runaways and teens. We are experienced and qualified to help, offering solutions which may include referrals to our international network of top professionals in the field of educational consulting, psychology, psychiatry, and investigations. Simply put, West Shield Adolescent Services and West Shield Investigations are the best solutions when your family is facing a personal crisis. Call 1-800-899-8585, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 1-800-899-8585, or visit our website at westshield.com. Thank you.
And we're back. We're talking with Bob Rosebrough, and we're talking about his latest book, A Place of Thin Veil, Life and Death in Gallup, New Mexico. So, Bob, share us a little bit more about the book itself. I know we've been talking a lot about Gallup, but one of the
features of the book is that I, as an outsider to Gallup, try to introduce the reader to the history of Gallup, and there is frankly some incredible history here. Gallup started out in 1880. That's when the railroad first came through Gallup, and that was the beginning of the town and the beginning of coal mining. Keep in mind that 1880 is roughly 12 years after the conclusion of the Long Walk, when the Navajo people walked back to this area from the eastern plains of New Mexico. When they were taken out to the eastern plains to Bosque Redondo, there were 8,000 Navajos. On the return 6 years later, 6,000 had survived the experience. A brutally difficult time for the Navajo people. And so here, 12 years later, comes the railroad and comes a bunch of coal miners. And when the route of a railroad coincides with the location of coal seams, there's a synergy to that. The coal that's mined helps the train operate, and it also provides a source of fuel that the railroad transports to other locations, including Southern California at the time. Was a large market for Gallup's coal. But this is a clash of cultures in the making. Navajo people who were imprisoned and finally released, but who had suffered incredibly, and an influx of railroaders and coal miners into the immediate area, and there was a lot of friction, and frankly, it's a strong word, but it's an accurate word. A lot of a history beginning of exploitation of Navajo people by some of the commercial practices in town. There was a lawyer, prominent lawyer in New Mexico, who was asked by the governor of New Mexico to come in and investigate business practices in Gallup early on. And he would he described a practice essentially of Navajos who culturally didn't know how to hadn't consumed alcohol, were consuming alcohol, were having difficulty with it, would become intoxicated, would become incarcerated, and then released. And the standard practice of the Justice of the Peace Court in Gallup was if there was any money left that the Navajos had, that was the exact amount of the fine that was imposed on the Navajos to be released. Now, the other aspect to this that's interesting is the coal miners themselves. They had an incredibly difficult job and an incredibly dangerous job.
Mm-hmm.
The people who flocked, the Europeans, Gallup started off attracting Northern Europeans and then Eastern Europeans and Southern Europeans. There's a lot of Italians, Croatians, Slavic people who came to Gallup and still have roots in Gallup. Hmm. And, those families, it's hard to overstate, the injury and difficulties that those coal mining families also suffered. It's a very different form of, mode of injury that the Navajos suffered versus the coal miners. But you have two colliding cultures, both of which have suffered very real injuries and deaths. So it was an interesting place to be. I'll kind of wrap up this part of it in terms of the very beginning days of Gallup. There were at one point when Gallup reached a population of 40,000, there were 22 bars in Gallup. So well over the amount you would expect for a town of 4,000 people. One of the bar maker, one of the first guy who founded the first coal mine, he also had a notorious bar, and he was kind of a scoundrel. He had difficulties with his mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and he killed his mother-in-law and his sister-in-law and tried to characterize it as an accident or portray it to the law enforcement people as an accident. But I guess the point I'll make is not so much to focus on him, but focus on this is underground coal mining. It's not strip mining. And this is an incredibly difficult occupation, incredibly difficult job. Yeah. And in virtually every coal mining family that you talk to in Gallup is going to have a family member who suffered a very severe injury or death in our coal mines.
In the mines, yeah. Wow. You mention in the book a particular Navajo warrior, and in the book you say that it's long overdue that his story is told. Share a little bit about that.
Well, I think you're referring to Larry Cassous.
Yes.
In 19 in 1973, I was a sophomore at the University of New Mexico, and I before going to a basketball practice, I was pulling in to get my basketball shoes and clothes to go after practice. And as I was driving into the dorm, Neil Young was singing "Southern Man" on the radio, and the song was interrupted by a radio announcer, and it was explaining that the mayor of Gallup, Emmett Garcia, had been kidnapped and at gunpoint in City Hall, taken 2 blocks down to Route 66 to a sporting goods store at gunpoint, and that the mayor had escaped by diving through a plate glass window. And there was no real information on who had kidnapped the mayor in that radio bulletin. But as it turned out, it was like me, a 19-year-old student at University of New Mexico who was half Navajo. His father was full-blood Navajo. His mother was Austrian. His parents had met in World War II. And he had been protesting the Gallup Mayor Emmett Garcia's appointment to the New Mexico Board of Regents. And the subject of his protest is that Mayor Garcia was a part owner of a notoriously problematic bar on the reservation boundary, just this side of the boundary, that habitually overserved Navajos. The parking lot of the Navajo Inn, as it was called, was generally littered by passed out Navajo men. In the summer, frequently it was described as being Navajo men completely passed out face down on ant piles. In the winter, though, it was worse. In the winter, excuse this word, but the parking lot was filled with what were described as popsicles, and that were Navajo men who had frozen to death. So, as you can imagine, the feelings and were high on this. Larry Cassous that was a time of Native American activism. It coincided with the AIM movement, and in fact, the incident that Wounded Knee in South Dakota that have no expertise or particular knowledge in, had occurred about 4 days before Larry Cassous kidnapped Mayor Garcia. So again, it illustrates the nature, kind of a core nature of our community, a clash between cultures, and it's a clash that runs very deep.
And in the book, you refer to this warrior's death. So I guess he was put to death for that.
He died. The mayor. Boy, it's a long story, and so I'm gonna try to be concise here. But the mayor did escape. The mayor, Larry Cassus's accomplice, fired a shotgun at the mayor as he was diving through the plate glass window. The mayor had 56 pellets. The mayor, who I met kind of late in his life, many years or not long after I was no longer mayor, he gave me a call and came in, and we went to lunch and visited. And he described personally his experiences. But it was, it's one of 2 or 3 stories, and that really exemplify kind of the clash of cultures and that we historically have suffered here, or not suffered, but that we have experienced here.
Yeah. Um, what I say is we have another listener question. I was looking, we have about 8 minutes. This one reads, I lived in Gallup, New Mexico until I was 20 years old, and my family relocated to Colorado for my father's work. I truly loved growing up there as I found the people very laid back and unpretentious. I had many Navajo and Hopi, if I'm pronouncing that right, friends that I am still very close to. My times spent on the reservation were very experiential, learning about nature and spirituality from their point of view. It molded me differently, and I greatly miss the simplicity and acceptance of life's cycles. Does your book go into any of your experiences with the reservation? And this is from Henry in Colorado.
Yes, there's a lot of we haven't really described this, but one of the pillars of my term as mayor was an outreach to Navajo people and to Navajo elected officials, and to try to start building some bridges there. And what this listener, the question really does epitomize Gallup, and I, not to beat this to death, but I describe Gallup as being wonderful and terrible, and I've kind of been focusing on the terrible for a while. Well, his words exemplify perfectly the wonderful aspect of Gallup. Just the nature here, the intermix of cultures, which in many cases is, as he's described it, is just wonderful. And there's a different side to it. But most young people who I think grow up in Gallup really value the life experience. I would say a couple of things. There's a couple of other historical stories that we just don't have time to get into. But there was a coal riot in 1935 where the sheriff of McKinley County died after some Mexican miners had rioted. We have that's in these stories about Gallup. One of the things that I found as someone really interested in Gallup's history, there's some things that come out about the stories when the participants are near death. When the firsthand actual participants in the stories are in their very, very late years. It's not unusual for us to hear kind of the rest of the story. And that's certainly the case of these Gallup stories. Another quick thing I would note on is we've been blessed in this community to essentially kind of be the home of the Navajo Code Talkers. This is the group of men who in World War II were recruited to develop a code that was used successfully in World War II.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say this, during Iwo Jima, the Navajo Code Talkers, over the course of 2 days, sent 800 messages during the American assault, or the Allies' assault on Iwo Jima. And the officers in charge, not the code talkers, but their commanding officers, their comment was, "We would not have taken Iwo Jima if not for the code talkers." There are, I think there were over 400 code talkers. There are now 2 or 3 who are left alive, who are still alive, and are still with us. But their story is remarkable.
Yeah, I remember reading about it, and I believe there was also a movie that was done about it as well that I think gave us a little bit of an idea of how important that was.
One other quick thing I should mention is, I was not the first mayor to take on Gallup's alcohol issue, or to take some initiative there. We had a mayor, Eddie Munoz, who who was a remarkable human being, and he was he had a willpower unlike no other, and he just was a remarkable and controversial man. But anyway, in 1989, he and members of our hospital community led a walk on foot from Gallup to the Santa Fe Capitol, seeking some alcohol reform legislation that was successful in terms of getting increasing or imposing a tax on alcohol that's used for healthcare and for treatment, and banning drive-up windows, which were frequently or were at that point permitted in Gallup. But anyway, there's we kind of go in lulls in Gallup, but it just but at points the lid just blows off, and that we're going to have eventually a controversy of some sort here with the passage of time.
And you mentioned the thing about the drive up, their drive through places to get alcohol. Years ago, I saw that in Texas, and it just amazed me. I thought, okay, so we're not supposed to drink and drive, but yet we're going to have a drive up, drive through, grab your alcohol.
Right.
What are they thinking? Anyway, but yeah, that was pretty astonishing to me. We've got just a couple of minutes, but I've got another question that has come in, and this one reads, I'm interested in living in Arizona or New Mexico to get out of the cold of Minnesota. I work in the healthcare industry and hope there are employment opportunities. Although I want to move to a warmer climate, I'm uncomfortable about the flood of illegal aliens coming into our country. Is this a problem in Gallup? And if so, how are the locals handling this from a safety aspect for both the illegal aliens and the residents there? And it says, lastly, do you think it's a good place to check out? This is from Amy in Minnesota.
We don't have problems in Gallup with immigrants or people who are not United States citizens. It's just we're about 300 or 400 miles away from the border.
Okay.
From the southern border. We're up in the northwest corner, and it's just not a problem. We have our share of problems in abundance, but that's not one of them.
But that's not one of them. And well, and the other point being in the northern corner, probably isn't a good place for what this person, Amy, is looking for, because they're looking for something warmer. So you probably want to be in one of the more southern regions.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we're at about 7,500 feet elevation here.
Okay. Well, Bob, time has just flown by. Is there anything else? We've just got about another minute or so that you want to share in regards to the book. And I'll just tell, and I assume people can get it at Amazon or their local bookstore. Just request it.
Yeah, it's available on Amazon and at local bookstores.
Okay.
We recently suffered a loss in Gallup with the death of Hershey Maimura, who was a Congressional Medal of Honor winner. Hershey passed away just a couple of weeks ago, and he was a true hero. He was a man of Japanese ancestry who fought in the Korean conflict. He sacrificed himself for his men.
Wow.
In battle for their safety so that they could escape, manning just a machine gun nest and permitting his men to escape. He was imprisoned and released, and was a true hero and inspiration to us here.
Oh, we need more of those. So, well, Bob, again, thank you so much. And again, so for everybody out there, the name of the book is A Place of Thin Veil, Life and Death in Gallup, New Mexico. And the author is Bob Rosebrough. Sorry.
Thank you, Alan. Enjoyed it.
All right. And for everybody out there, please be with us next week when we're joined by Frida Birnbaum, PhD, as she discusses the new book, Do Violent Shows Trigger Real Violence? And what about video games? Same question. So we're going to be touching on that. And I'm also looking for more questions because there are people that have strong beliefs on one side or the other in regards to this, and we want to hear from you. So send us your questions, send us your thoughts. And when you get the opportunity, please visit our archives of past interviews at Answers Network. You can also subscribe to the show. You can do it through iHeartRadio, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, Rumble, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, and so many other platforms. And if you like what you hear, please leave a review. It will help us reach more people, and I want you to know we greatly appreciate it. Next time you're on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, please remember, stop by our page, check out some of our latest shows, and if you like them, please like us and spread the word. For everybody out there, be good human beings, and be with us again next week on Answers Network.
You're listening to Answers Network with Alan Cardoza, only on LA Talk Radio.